Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Moon Faces and Essential Oils. Today, we're going to talk about the upcoming full moon, the Pisces full moon. It's coming up this weekend, September 10th. It's this Saturday. Now, you may already feel some fogginess or some fusing kind of energy, or if you're a creative kind of person, even if you're not, you may be feeling more creative at this time. These things are connected because this moon is about tapping into things that you don't see, that are not necessarily rational, or things that you can touch. You know, it's more of like the creative side and going into a creative dream, but you're awake. So it's a really potent time to be creative. And if you're a musician or you're an artist of any type, you like to dance, or you can be creative in other ways, like, maybe you have to do some sort of presentation, or at work you have to do some creative problem solving. This is a good time to tap into that energy. It's just going to be more related to your instincts and to the creative part of your brain, and not necessarily the rational, logistical, or, show me the facts. Those are things that might be a little elusive. We're going into this full moon and we're going into a Mercury retrograde. So we really have to look at those things together. I'm going to give you the details. The Mercury retrograde happens on Friday or early Saturday morning if you're living in Europe, where I usually am. I'm going to give you the details. The Mercury retrograde is going to start later Friday evening, like 8:30 if you're on the west coast of the United States, and around 11:30 if you're on the east coast. And then if you're in Rome, where I usually am, it'll be around 5:30 in the morning. So we're already feeling that slowdown of Mercury. So the full moon then happens Saturday also, when Mercury is going retrograde, kind of within that 24 hours. Saturday, the full moon culminates early in the morning, around 3 o'clock in the morning if you're on the west coast of the United States, and around 6 o'clock in the morning on the east coast, and then around 12:30 if you're in Rome, Italy on Saturday, September the 10th. It's really important to, when you're thinking about this full moon, that you're thinking about these two events happening at the same time. So back to Mercury retrograde. It starts showing up energetically before the actual time. And it's what we call the shadow period. It's a time period when the planet Mercury is slowing down in terms of the way it moves around the zodiac in astrology. Now, it's not actually going backwards in the physical sky. It's metaphorical, you could say, in astrology, and it has to do with the way the planets move around in their orbits and the way that it curves around in that circular motion, and it appears to go backwards because planets are passing other planets. Kind of like, if you're on a train and one train's going faster than the other one, it might look like the slower train is going backwards when you pass it, but it's not. It's just going at a different speed. So that's kind of the concept that we're working with. The energetically active energy is this slowing down of the pace, and then it actually goes retrograde, and that lasts for about 3 weeks, and then it goes direct. And what's really important to know is that the potency of the energy seems to be really strong as we go into the dates that it's going retrograde and the days after that, and then it kind of calms down into its rate going retrograde. And then as we get to the dates when it's going to go direct, it's the same thing, because it's getting ready to change directions. And so it makes it more wiggly, more annoying, you could say, at the times when it's going retrograde and when it's going direct. And that is right now. As you're watching this, going into the full moon, the motion of Mercury is getting slower and slower and slower. And that's why you may find that any kind of delays are happening, communication breakdowns are happening, or that what you could usually do more quickly is taking you more time. And if you're trying to squeeze a whole bunch of stuff into a short amount of time, you find that you're not able to get it all done. So it's important to be aware of these time periods so that you can plan around them, and you can manage your frustration and your stress as these time periods come into our lives, because it can be stressful. But when we know that it's coming, we can kind of plan for it. And I think that's the big message, is that you want to plan for it. And it's also going to happen right when the full moon is happening. And so energetically, it's going to be really, really potent. Now, every Mercury retrograde, every full moon, and every new moon, which I do the full moon and new moon videos, we know that the energy is different because the planets are in different places in the sky and they make different relationships with each other. So we want to look at this Mercury retrograde in the context of this full moon and what's going on at the full moon. Now, this is a Pisces full moon, and Pisces is one of the most creative signs, and it's definitely a sign that tends to be able to use instincts very well. It's a water sign. So we're talking about tapping into our emotions and tapping into the parts of us that can instinctually know things or feel things. If you're a person who's very rational and grounded and lives on what you can see and what you can feel, then this can be uncomfortable. This is an energy that's calling you away from that. If you're a creative person in any capacity, it does not have to just be artists, but it does tend to be artists very much relate to this kind of energy. You could really love this period of time. I don't want you to think that, oh, this is just bad. Oh my gosh, it's Mercury retrograde. It's going to be, a really terrible September, October. No, we can work with it. However, you will have to go about doing things in the way that this energy is suggesting if you want to get the most out of it. Now, you can try to continue to do things as normal. And if you do, you may be slowed down. You may find that it's more challenging to do so. If you just build a little extra time into your calendar, it can go so far for you. It can really just help avoid stressful situations. If you do nothing else, just try to pad your calendar. Plan for more buffer time. It's really going to help you. Okay, now let's start talking about some of the other things going on that really make this full moon energy fun and exciting and interesting, and also confusing and potentially stressful, and asking you to use some different skills around navigating through the fog. I say fog on purpose because one of the most important signatures of this Pisces full moon is that there's also this planet called Neptune in Pisces. And Neptune and the moon moving closely together during this full moon brings on an additional component of either fogginess or creativity and spirituality. Neptune is a gas planet. It's like you can't touch it, you can't hold it. It's like gas, or like steam or vapor that maybe you can see it with your eyes, but if you try to touch it, you can't. Like my Mr. Diffuser right there behind me, maybe you can see the diffusing, the vapor coming up out of there. And if I tried to touch it, I can't hold it, but it's there and I can see it. So this is a really good analogy for this full moon. It's going to be the things that you feel or that you believe, that you have faith in, but you can't touch it. You can't, pull it out and say, look, it's right here. It's not a physical thing. This full moon is one to spend some time in your daydream, in your creative mind, like creating things that make you feel good or doing something that is very spiritual to you. When we consider the Mercury retrograde, that in conjunction with the Mercury retrograde, the moon with Neptune and Mercury retrograde kind of says like there's just going to be a lot of unclear, daydreamy kind of feelings around it, which is amazing and cool if you don't have to do anything super productive and logistical. Like if you're really busy at work and you have to produce something that is really grounded, like I have to do a budget, or I have to do a model of something, like I'm building something with my hands, or I have to like make something, I'm working in a factory. That's when those little annoyances that come with Mercury retrograde can really make it difficult. And what is going to be something that is positive in that is that you can come up with some really creative problem solving around it in a way that calls upon the side of your brain that you just kind of really like sit back and let ideas flow. Like free association is a great concept for this full moon because it's very much about the stuff that you can't touch. And so you really may be called to think about your faith. And remember, it's a retrograde, so reflecting, realigning, redoing. And so creative problem solving can come out of that. And then also it's a full moon, so we're really full of something. So we could be really full of ideas. And if you've been stuck with the Mercury retrograde asking us to reflect back, and this Neptune and moon partnership happening in the sky, it's kind of like you could have these super creative ideas, like some really creative problem solving about something from the past or something that you're already doing. So not necessarily about creating something brand new that's never existed before. It's really likely it's going to call you back to something that you've either already started or maybe something that you've been thinking about for a long time and you really want to do something with it. So those are really good things to do with this Mercury retrograde and moon Neptune energies that are combined together. And in order to have a full moon, that means that the sun and the moon are in the signs that are opposite each other in the zodiac. So Virgo and Pisces are always opposite. They're two sides of the same line. So Virgo is the very detailed sign. It's organized. It's very categorical. It's an earth element. So it's physical. It's about physical things that you can touch, things that you can put in order. And we talked about Virgo and the new moon 2 weeks ago because that was the sign of the new moon. And we were already under the Mercury retrograde shadow. And I talked a lot about decluttering and realigning, and it was really a good time to kind of go and clean out your closet, clean out your car, clean up your to-do list, clean up your action list. Hopefully you did some of that. And now we're moving into the full moon, and it's the other side of the same axis, and we're focused on Pisces. And Pisces, being the opposite of Virgo, is very ethereal, and it's about your faith, having integrity when you're really unsure of what's going on around you. You could feel confused. You could feel like you're not really sure which way to go. You could not know how to make a decision. There's things that are coming up and you're just kind of like, I'm not really sure what to do. And you're looking for logical ways of figuring that out. And that's going to be more difficult than kind of saying, okay, I'm going to look for signs, or I'm going to just take some time and do nothing and see what comes into my head, see what pops in there. It's like really paying attention to what the universe is sending your way, kind of like just believing, like, what do you believe in? It's a theme that could come up this weekend as we go through the full moon and as we go into Mercury retrograde this weekend. The Mercury retrograde will last longer than the full moon phase that we're going into, but it really marks the beginning of the Mercury retrograde phase. I wanted to talk about something else that I think is really important to acknowledge. That is stress management. When things become unclear, when there is some confusion, or just feeling like you're in this fog and it's like you just can't see, like you're like trying to clear it away, but like you just can't see what to do, it can cause stress. It can increase your stress levels. And if you suffer from any type of anxiety, it can increase your anxiety. You may or may not have clinical anxiety. If you do, then I want you to be aware that this level of confusion in Mercury retrograde can increase it because there's this feeling of a loss of control. When you know that this particular type of energy is coming, then you can prepare for it. You can plan for it. You can come up with how you're going to reframe things. You can come up with some positive statements that you're going to say. And you can decide that as you go through this time period, that you're going to handle it differently, that you're going to stop thinking too much, because the mind can be like, I'm going to figure this out. Yet that is exactly what is not going to probably happen. It's like you're trying so hard to think it out, and the answer just is elusive. Elusiveness is a great word for this full moon, especially the moon Neptune thing. And so as these things become elusive, to stop trying so hard to think it out and try to feel it out. Sometimes the best way to do that is, instead of focusing inside in your mind, to be open to what is happening around you. Has somebody said something to you, and somehow inside of what they said lies the answer? Or if you're going somewhere, you're doing something, pay attention to what pops up. Maybe you're surfing the net and something pops up and it's related to whatever it is that you feel like is elusive. And there's some message. It's like, oh, wow, like I wasn't even expecting to get that from whatever you were searching for. One of the best things that I have found that works is when I'm trying to do something under a Mercury retrograde and it's just not working. Like I was trying to do something on the computer the other day and it wasn't working. And I was pushing and pushing. And then I said, what are you doing? It's Mercury retrograde. You know that this is a sign So listen to the sign. I decided to stop doing that, decided to do something else that needed to be done. And that flowed. Like I was able to just move into it, get through it. And it would happen without any resistance, without any Mercury retrograde annoyances. And it's like, okay, that's the message from the universe, or, you know, God, or whatever word you want to use, your angels, your fairy godmother, you know, whatever works for you. But pay attention to those things. When you find that you have movement, forward movement, then you're working with the flow. And when you're trying to do something and you keep hitting resistance, then listen to what the universe is saying. This is a period of time to do that. There are other periods of time when we don't have the Mercury retrograde, when we don't have Moon Neptune things, and you might hit an obstacle and there's a good reason to keep pushing through. What we're talking about right now is a different kind of energy. And if you're hitting that kind of resistance, then it's probably telling you this is not the right time to do that. And listen to the universe, listen to your messages, and try to do something different. Hopefully that you will have the options to do that. You know, like set it aside and come back to it in an hour, set it aside and come back to it the next day, if that will work for you. Now, if it won't, that's when you can hit some serious frustration. And going back to what I was saying before about stress management and anxiety, knowing that you could potentially experience some of that, plan ahead. You know, I talk about essential oils. I have some essential oil ideas for you. You know, that's one really fast thing that you can do. When you use an essential oil, it can immediately help you shift your mood and maybe reset. And so if you can't walk away from a project, can't delay something or even an hour, sometimes just taking like 30 seconds, walk away, regroup, reset, breathe in some essential oils, and then come back to it. Stepping away is probably the best thing that you can do. I think that this full moon and Mercury retrograde is really asking you to review your adaptation skills. How well do you adapt to things? Those of you who do tend to adapt well to things may ride through this full moon and this Mercury retrograde fairly easy. I mean, yeah, you're still going to hit some snags and some frustrations and some delays and some confusion. When you tend to adapt well to things already, then you're going to adapt to these things and you're going to say, okay, I'm shifting, I'm going with the flow. And, you know, you're just kind of like moving and grooving with what's happening. If you're the kind of person that's more rigid, you're someone who keeps the pace, keeps things going. You know, that's a wonderful thing. So it's not to say that people who adapt are better than people who don't adapt, because both of them have wonderful places in our society. It's more about where are you on the spectrum of how well you adapt, saying, well, this is where I am. And so this is how I want to prepare for this full moon. And this is how I want to work through the Mercury retrograde. So if you are one of those who does kind of keep the pace, if you're one of the people who is very steady and very into your routines, then you want to plan ahead for what you're going to do when your routine is more disrupted than usual. So what are some of the things that you can do? Put more padding in your schedule. And I would say do that from right now, when you're watching this, until the first week of October. Even better if you can go to the second week, because by the second week of October, we'll be moving out of the shadow of Mercury retrograde and we'll be done with this cycle. So that's really more related to Mercury retrograde than it is to the full moon, because the moon moves really fast. And we're going to have this full moon this weekend. We're going to have kind of this amazing ability to tap into some creative energy and be like, oh, like woo woo. And, you know, hopefully you don't have a lot on your calendar and you can do things that you really love, things that spiritually make you feel good, things that make your soul just say, oh, that feels so good. You know, maybe you want to get a massage, or you'll go dancing, or you'll create art if you're an artist, or even if you're not an artist, you might want a vision board, or do something creative around your house. Those are some important things to take note of. Like, where are you on your adaptivity? How well do you adapt? And when you know how well you adapt, it's going to help you figure out how well or how easy this energy may be for you to experience over the weekend. We must talk about another planet that is sending some vibes to this full moon Mercury retrograde, and that's this planet called Uranus. It is active in a way that works really well with the sign Pisces and also with the sign Virgo. And I mention that because the sun is in Virgo. Uranus is the planet of sudden and unexpected things. And that can be like really good things or not so good things. And it's not for me to say what that's going to be for you in your life, because it could be either one. And of course, we all have our individual astrology charts, and that's going to give a lot more information on how you're going to experience that. In general, Uranus brings surprises, which can be a blessing in disguise. The position of Uranus is in a position that has a flowing kind of energy and a opportunistic kind of energy, meaning easy for that energy to manifest, not so much opportunistic as positive or negative. I'm hoping that it can bring some good surprises for you because it's not really agitating. So a lot of times I'm talking about like where there's tension and agitation to be aware of. And in this case, it's not necessarily agitating and bringing a lot of tension. It's actually bringing a lot of flow, easy flow. So there could be something surprising that comes in, or, you know, a disruption that comes in, and it happens very easy. Like it's very easy for it to move in. It can be very positive. Like, I don't know, maybe you surprisingly win the lottery if you, or you get, you know, a present or a compliment, or just, you know, something that you weren't expecting, and, you know, it comes very easy and flows into you. The point is that in addition to all the things that I've already mentioned, there is this energy vibe of unexpected things that come into play. When unexpected things come in, whether it's a disruption or just a big change, it's kind of like take a step back. You know, we're in a Mercury retrograde and we have this full moon, which is full of energy. And we know that there's some fogginess and confusion around that, but there's also a lot of creative problem solving around that. If it shows up in an unexpected surprise that you're not all that happy about, take a step back, take a deep breath, and decide that the way you're going to handle it is you're going to focus on creative problem solving, solution finding. And this is important because what humans tend to do is start worrying. You may focus on the past or you may worry about the future. And neither of those things are going to change the reality of the present moment. The best thing to do is, when you catch yourself doing that, is to bring yourself into the present and focus on problem solving, creative solution finding. I'm getting into mindfulness territory now. It works. If you use it, it works. You can know what to do, and then the moment hits, and then you completely forget about it. So mindfulness is an easy concept. What makes it difficult is remembering to actually do that. So I'm asking you to please remember to do it in whatever way you need to do. Do you need to write a post-it and stick it on your bathroom mirror that says, remember to bring it back into the present moment when I hit unexpected things, when I feel like I can't solve a problem, when I feel like I'm so confused and foggy. And then I start ruminating and I start worrying, and I either focus on past stuff and how rotten whatever happened, or I start worrying about future stuff, and that fear comes into play. Those are signs to say, oh, now I need to come back into the present moment. The other thing to keep in mind is that we all do that. So it's not about stopping it and never doing it again. That's not possible. That's not human nature. And it's not about stopping it. It's about recognizing it and then doing something about it, which is to take your focus and bring it back to the present and try to watch what's happening around you. Watch what messages are kind of coming to you in a way that is not the factual way. Like, you're not going to go and probably find the answer from trying harder on your computer to write, you know, the solution. It's more about letting it come to you from free association, from looking around, like, what are you doing? Is there a message there? Does someone call and happen to say something and it relates to what your confusion was about, seemingly unrelated? There's a thing called synchronicity, and that means there are no coincidences, and that if you open yourself wider to see the messages that are coming to you, you will find the answers in places that you didn't expect. But when you're so focused on what's in front of you, what you can touch, what you can feel, proof, facts, things like that, then you may be missing it. You know, you've got those blinders on, and it's like, no, I'm going to find it the normal way, when the answers are maybe there, but you're not opening up to them. And I think that that is a good way to look at this full moon, is really opening yourself for messages and answers that come through ways that are a bit woo-woo. Okay, there's one more thing that I wanted to bring up, and that is Mars. Mars is actually going to go retrograde too, but that doesn't happen until late October. However, the way the Mars retrograde cycle works is that it has a longer period of time before Mars slows down and goes retrograde. So we're already getting into the period of time where Mars is starting to slow down. That means that we may start feeling more fatigued or more tired right now, and it's going to increase until Mars goes retrograde, and then it will go through its retrograde cycle. And I'm definitely going to talk more about that in a video coming up. I just wanted to mention it in case you're starting to feel the physical tiredness, and it may show up differently in your chart because, everybody has a different chart, and where it shows up, it's going to give you more information. But I can tell you that it's going to happen in the sign of Gemini. So if you know your chart, if you know where Gemini falls, because we all have Gemini somewhere in our chart, then that is going to give you more information. If you know that you're a Gemini, like your birthday is a Gemini sign, or if like your moon sign or your rising sign, then, and especially your rising sign, if you're a Gemini rising, then you might really feel physically in your body more tired, and it could kick off as we're going into this full moon. So I did want to mention that. Let's talk about some essential oils. I have a few for you. The first one is lavender. I know I say lavender a lot. Lavender is my favorite oil. And I have said to many of my friends, if you can only have one essential oil in your cabinet, have lavender. Lavender is good for so many things. It's really great for calming the nerves. It's uplifting. It smells really good. And when we go into a Mercury retrograde, there's just usually some stress and annoyance that comes with that. Even though Mercury retrograde is a great time to slow down the pace, realign things, to reflect back and correct or redo anything that has taken place since the last Mercury retrograde. It's just that this particular one has so much of this kind of woo-woo energy around it that even reflecting back and realigning and redoing may be hard to do. So I think that this Mercury retrograde is a lot about slowing down the pace. It's going to retrograde back to the sign Virgo, which is one of its own signs. And so there's definitely going to be this need and desire to reorganize and realign and redo. But I would wait until we get away from the full moon energy. Aim for next weekend. If you have to get going on some, serious organizational things, do it in the middle of this week. But this weekend, I would just try to step away from it. Whatever reflection you're doing would be most helpful if you do just some free association, just let your creative mind go. And, where does it take you? What is it telling you? Like, this might be more of a time to think about the bigger picture. Like, where do you really want to go in your life? Like, are you going in the right direction? And I'm talking about like the longer term, bigger picture. What is your mission in life? Like, this is what I do in my program. And I think it's really important because if you stay focused on the short term without really knowing where you want to go in the long term, you can spend a lot of time going forward, but not really going towards anything. And I think that's probably one of the best things you can do at this full moon is let yourself think about the big picture. Like, where do I really want to be? What is my mission in life? When I get to be at the age where I feel like most of my life is behind me, what do I want to have achieved? And this can be difficult because you may not be on that path of going where that is that you want to go. But I'll tell you what, the sooner that you get honest with yourself and you decide what you really want to achieve in this lifetime, the sooner you can get working on that. And it's never too late and you're never too old. I love quotes because I'm going to have some for you coming up soon. Okay, so back to lavender. Lavender is a great one to use while you're going through this process. The next one is basil. Basil is one of my favorite essential oils. It's not one of the more common ones that people tend to have in their cabinets. I recommend that you do. I think it has a lot of purposes. And if you like the way it smells, then you're going to want to have it in your cabinet. Now, if you get it and you're like, I really just don't like it, well, then maybe that's not the oil for you. You might want to gift it to someone else and say, thank you, I tried it, it's not for me. But a lot of people really like it. I love it. I use it all the time, and it mixes really well with a lot of other oils. So I would recommend using basil. It's good with helping you balance, especially when you're feeling agitated and nervous, which are Mercury retrograde words. The next one is bergamot or bergamot, depending on where you live and how you say it. It's a floral kind of scent, one of my favorites too. I do use that a lot and I mix it a lot. So I usually mix up different oils rather than just using one at a time. As a matter of fact, what I have going back here is a mix, and all of the oils that I'm mentioning are even in this mix that I bought. already mixed up. This one I got is for focus and clarity, which I thought was great for Mercury retrograde because it's kind of hard to do focus and clarity during a Mercury retrograde. So bergamot is really great for helping to uplift your mood and relieve anxiety and stress, which are things that we've talked about today. I have two more. The next one is sweet orange, which is a citrus. And I think all citrus oils tend to be uplifting and cheery. So if you don't have sweet orange, use one of your other citruses. It's actually a pretty inexpensive essential oil, so it's definitely another one that you want to have in your cabinet. It's calming and uplifting. It can help you focus and get energized. If you are really needing to do a lot of work and lavender makes you just too like, oh, I'm just too relaxed with lavender, then go to the sweet orange because it's going to help you relax, but not in a I want to fall asleep way, but more in a I am uplifted and I have more energy kind of way. That's sweet orange. And then the last one is peppermint, which is another staple. And it's probably my number 2 suggestion after lavender of an essential oil that you want to always have in your cabinet. Has lots and lots of purposes, and it's really great for focus, for clarity. It is uplifting, smells great. That fogginess that I've talked about, it can help kind of like cut through that. And it's a great Mercury retrograde oil. I have some quotes for you. I love quotes, and I have 4 of them for you that I think relate to the energy that we're going into in this full moon Pisces energy this weekend. The first one, it's actually an anonymous proverb. It says, "Just when the caterpillar thought the world was ending, it turned into a butterfly." And I like that because I think it relates to that Uranus energy that I talked about, like unexpected things could happen. It's a very beautiful proverb, right? And it was unexpected. And I think that's the big takeaway that I want to say is that even though when you hear sudden and unexpected things, like unexpected disruptions, that it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. Do keep that in mind. And I really don't want you to come out of this video really worried, but I want you to come out of it prepared because this is a different kind of energy. And we're really being asked to slow down and pay attention to what's going on around and get away from that logistical side of the brain, the rational side of the brain, and really try to dig into the instincts. That's for the full moon. After we get past the full moon, and Mercury's retrograding and it's going to get back into Virgo later on in September, then you want to get into the more of the organizational kind of stuff and the detail stuff and the decluttering of your to-do list. And definitely going to talk more about that as we move into the next new moon, as we move through the Mercury retrograde. But I really want to talk about how Mercury retrograde is working with this full moon this weekend. Next quote. This is from Anne Lamott. She's an author, and she says, "Almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you." I did talk about that earlier, just about stepping away. If you can step away for an hour or for, the afternoon and come back to it later in the day, or if you can postpone something for the day that you're finding resistance to, this could really help. Unplug yourself and do something different. See what is easy to do. Where is there the least resistance? Because maybe that is what the universe is asking you to focus on. The next one is from Sonia Ricotti. Sounds Italian. And she says, "Surrender to what is, let go of what was, and have faith in what will be." Now, I really like this for the Neptunian concept, the Neptune and the moon together in Pisces, because it's really about having faith, about not being able to see what's next or how to get to where you need to go, but having faith that you're going to get there and having faith that you're going to find the right way. And that will help you open to some of those messages that can be coming from unexpected places, right? You open up and Uranus sends a message to you that you didn't expect to find or didn't expect to see. Maybe you're driving and there's a billboard and it says some statement and, it's advertising some product, but somehow it relates to what you're thinking about and where you're maybe stuck. And it's like, oh, I have it. It's this lightning bolt of information that's going to help me. So it's really about expanding and opening to the potentials and possibilities that are outside the logistical, factual plane. The very last one is from a scientist, Stephen Hawking. If you know of him, he was a pretty famous astronomical physicist. I may not be getting that right, but in that area. He says, "The universe doesn't allow perfection." Now, this is important. I did not talk that much earlier about the sun in Virgo, but I did refer to it. And I really love this because Virgo is all about perfection. Virgos tend to be hypercritical first to themselves. And that's why sometimes they get called critical. And so I just want to clarify that Virgos are really trying hard to do the best that they can. And this is a personality trait. And sometimes that comes off as being critical, but inside of them, Virgos are very, very, very service oriented. They want to do a good job. They want to provide service. They want to be of help. With that comes this sense of being perfectionistic, which can sometimes be debilitating, because it's impossible. The universe doesn't allow for perfection. What do you do in those moments? Well, bring it back to the present moment. And I talked about that earlier. It's like, well, what do? You recognize that you're probably focused on the past or you're focused on the future. And that's usually about fear. Fear, acronym, false expectations appearing real. That's fear. False expectations appearing real. We all do it, right? We all worry about the future. We all focus on things of the past that, we maybe wish we could have done differently. Neither of those things helps change the present moment. What helps change the present moment is focusing on creative solutions. And we have this very creative Neptunian energy with the moon this weekend where we can tap into things that we maybe normally don't tap into, or maybe we do. If you're someone who does regularly rely on your instincts and kind of go deeply into your emotional nature and you feel your way through life, and you are accepting messages as they come from places that are not usually where you'd think that you get your messages, that's going to be a really lovely full moon for you this weekend. Let's go into some ideas of what to do for this full moon. Full moons are culminations, and you can do your full moon ritual Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's the midpoint of a cycle, so it's not as important to wait until the full moon cycle starts. It's okay to do it, even today as we're moving into the full moon. However, it is on the weekend, so that's quite nice if you want to take the time over the weekend when maybe you're not working to do something for the full moon. Is a water element. So Pisces is water element. And so I would recommend doing anything near water. And so if you can't get to water, if you don't live near the ocean, the sea, or a lake or a pond, then take a bubble bath, or maybe there's a fountain near where you live and you can go see it. Throw a coin into a fountain or a wishing well. That would be a really cool thing to do this full moon. I do have a free resource on my website that has full moon rituals for each element, and you can just go and get that for free on my website. And so you'd want to do the water element full moon ritual. I think one of the best things that you can do for this full moon is to unplug and recharge. You may want to do this by yourself. This is really a self-care kind of full moon. I would definitely take some time over the weekend, unplug, relax, and rest. And if you have a lot of family, or if you have kids and you're like, I can never do that, my house is just always busy, then try to plan it with your family. And maybe you each do it together, like you do it at the same time, but in your own space, like you take that room, I take this room, I take that room, and just have like a quiet half an hour, quiet hour. You can take the family to the beach if you live near the beach, or to, the body of water. But I would try to make it a quiet kind of event, which I know can be hard to do with kids, but if you can take them to a swimming pool, if you're living somewhere where it's warm, where they can have their peace in the water, and you can have your peace also in the water or next to the water. With the Mercury retrograde, it is a good time for reflecting back in a way that is causing you peace and calm. Maybe reflect back on some of your happiest times or your most creative times and journal about that. That would be a great way to bring in the full moon. And then I think I mentioned about earlier, and even if you go to a body of water, taking a bath, candlelight bath with some essential oils in the bath, some of the essential oils I mentioned earlier, is a really nice way to bring in the Pisces full moon. The full moon phase lasts 2 weeks until we get to the next new moon, and not everyone will have a chance to do the full moon ritual on the full moon. So I have more ideas that you can do over the next 2 weeks under this Pisces full moon phase. So if you didn't get to the wishing well on the full moon, maybe you can get to one in the couple of weeks of the full moon phase. Engage in artistic activities. So, maybe that's a wine and paint, or maybe it's going to do the ceramic thing where you make your own ceramics. Maybe it's going to a dance class or just dancing in general, listening to your favorite music, or listening to the sound of waves. You know how they have those nature music things that you can buy now, or you can listen to waves, or you can listen to streams, or you can listen to the rain. That would be a really nice thing to do over the next few weeks. Listen to your favorite music, things like that could be very nice and very relaxing. You definitely want to try to slow down the pace under this full moon phase. And there's one thing that I didn't mention earlier, and that's Venus is going to be in the same sign as the sun. They're in Virgo, and then they're going to be across from the moon in Neptune. And it's going to be a really romantic time. So you have the two opposite signs with the moon and the sun and Venus and Neptune. So if you are in a relationship, this can be very, very, very romantic. So you might want to plan some romantic time together, whether you plan it away or you plan it like a romantic dinner, or you reminisce, you go to places that are special to you as a couple, you go where you met, or you eat at the restaurant where you got engaged, or things like that. That can be really, really nice. If you're single and you're out looking and you meet someone, they can appear to be the perfect person, like so perfect. Now, knowing that there's confusion and fog in the air and Mercury's going retrograde, it can be an illusion, or it can be true. The truth is, you're not going to know until after this phase passes. So what I would say to you is go with it, enjoy it, have fun. Just be careful to not make any commitments until you get way away from this energy. Because if you meet someone under this energy, it can take time before you find out like all of the truths. And we all know that when we first meet someone romantically, we put our best foot forward, right? And so that's normal, even when it's not a Mercury retrograde and it's not a Neptune across from Venus and the sun across from Moon. But with this, you can meet someone that just seems like the very, very, very perfect person, the one you've been waiting for your whole life. And it can be true. I'm not saying that it's not true, but I'm saying that it could be not true. And it's probably not going to be clear until you give it some time. So just be aware of that, and make sure that you wait months. And I can't really say any more than that because it really depends on your chart. Like this one thing isn't going to be the thing that's going to determine that. There's a lot of other variables. It's just that if you meet someone under this particular transit, that is kind of like the event of the meeting of that person. And so there is some of that energy built into it, but what it doesn't talk about is how it relates to your individual chart. That is something that you would want to consult an astrologer for, and you are welcome to schedule something with me. You can do that through my website. Okay, the last couple of things that I have for you: participate in a retreat or something spiritual with the group of people that you trust. So that could be a really cool thing to do. You may not be able to do it this weekend, but if there's something coming up, a group that you're part of, or something local that you can go and participate in, I would say that's something great to do. That is the Pisces full moon video. It has a lot of things going on, and we know Mercury retrograde is starting at the same time. The typical things that we do under the Mercury retrograde will all apply. I just think let's get past this weekend and not focus so much on the realigning as much as just kind of tapping in and seeing like, what is my mission in life? What is it that I want to do? Like this would be a better way to kick off the Mercury retrograde. And then after we get past it, after we get, further along in the full moon phase, then I would start working on realigning or, redoing things, redecorating, all the typical Mercury retrograde things that I talk about. I have a Mercury retrograde survival guide, and I'm going to include the link to that in the links in the text description below so that you can read more about that. And I will be back with the next video for the new moon, and that's going to be on Sunday, September 25th. And that'll be a Libra new moon. I will see you then. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.